All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the True North Audio Podcast. I'm your host, Kiko. We are back. First of the new year. Been a little bit of a wait. Been kind of working on some other stuff, but I'm trying to really get this going again, and I'm hoping to have at least one episode out every month this year. And so, joining me in the new year, I have GOJII with the new album, or I guess a new EP, Currents. Just a little 4-track thing that dropped here early January. Figure we'll do a little album chat and some just kind of chill conversation for you guys. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, not a problem. First of all, I got to say, that album cover, absolutely the best of the year. I know it's only January, but I don't think anything's going to be beating that.
Oh my goodness, yes. That artist's name is Fear, and they do a spectacular job with their artwork. I actually discovered them because they did the art for Patricia Taxon and her album. I think it was like Visiting Narcissa. Yeah, Fear did the album cover for that one, and I really, really enjoyed how that looked. So
yeah,
I reached out. Yeah, it's they do a really cool like style. It's like almost surreal. So like I reached out to them on Twitter, and it turns out like they are already a fan of my music.
Oh, nice.
To begin with. Yeah, so
already a great start.
Yeah, like that was really cool to me. So I gave them my reference for my character, and I gave them the EP, and I told them, I'm like, okay, give it a listen. Anything that comes to your mind visually, like feel free to go crazy with the art and just include my character. And
yeah, so very loose brief then.
Yeah. I love having this thing lately where I give artists who do the album cover complete creative freedom.
Nice.
And it's such a cool collaboration because they're creating visually what they see in their head when they listen to the music, and a lot of times it's very similar to what I see in my head when I create it. So it's just really cool.
That's always a good deal. I mean, choosing an artist that you know is going to give you your vision in a broad sense, but you know who's going to deliver something very striking, or that's going to be something you would already want to see, is definitely good. I mean, basically, you're working as a team. You're choosing your artist in the same way you choose a producer or a guitarist for a project or whatever. So I just, it sounds like you saw that and said, I'll have a bit of that, please. That sounds like it's exactly what I want.
Yeah, it's great because I like being able to find visual artists that very much synergize with the audio, and they did a spectacular job with the cover. Like, there's going to be vinyl editions of the EP available in February, like the first Friday, which is Bandcamp Friday.
I'm really hoping to get one of those. I don't know if I'll have the cash, but I'm going to be sitting there waiting for it to drop like it's a ticket for a Tool concert or something.
Yeah, they're going to be super limited. But my favorite thing about it is seeing the cover, but like blown up to like, you know, like a sleeve of a vinyl is like really cool. Like that's something that like physical merch is really cool to me, because I just feel like it's forever immortalized in this form you can like hold.
There's a tactile experience for sure. That's
yeah.
I mean, I'm not a huge vinyl collector, as I don't have the money for vinyl a lot of the time, but I will get a lot of my favorite, like all-time favorite records, or even just, again, ones that I think have really stunning art. And, you know, I've said before, you can put aside the argument about whether or not vinyl is a superior audio experience or anything like that. There is also just the satisfaction of the tactile experience of pulling out a record and putting it on the turntable and just relaxing to it.
Yeah, it's really cool, and I mean, I kind of grew up in a background of like CDs and cassette tapes, but like I never actually grew up with vinyl. So, to be able to have the resources now with the different stuff we have on the internet, and to be able to do this as an indie artist is really cool to me, because for the longest time, trying to find an affordable vinyl cutting service as an indie musician has been very, very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
They
for sure.
Yeah. They go up like in the several thousands to have it done, and it's like crazy. But like, I found this one service that it's like on demand, so it's pretty cool.
I was going to ask too if you had the vinyls already cut, or if it was going to be something you were doing as a sort of pre-order for a package or anything like that. But yeah, if it's on demand, that's going to be really handy. I don't think I'd seen that yet. That man, I remember the first time I was looking at vinyl with an old project, and it was, yeah, I mean, it's like you're saying, it's like get a couple hundred of them as your minimum order, and it's still going to be $4,000 or something just to print them, and you got to sell them at like $40 a pop just to make any money off them.
Yeah, like it's crazy, but like, I don't know. I like the resources that I have as an indie artist on like the internet, so it's cool to have these available.
Yeah.
So
we live in a very democratized era of music for sure. I mean, another good example of that, I've seen you do a lot of the forget all the virtual space, like the virtual raves and like shows over VR chat and stuff. I noticed lately it seems like you're struggling with the old video card you were using. But I mean, it's crazy that you can do that even from home. Just set up a show and people are on VR chat can tune in from anywhere around the world and actually share that musical experience. It's crazy what we can do these days.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I've always been DJing in a virtual space, even a little bit before I started using VR chat. Like I think back in, I want to say around 2017, I was a resident DJ for a Second Life club, and like Second Life it's still going to this day, and it's really cool to see that community. But I know a few good bit of people through Second Life before I even got into VR chat. But yeah, like you said, it's crazy because you have all these musical clubs and scenes in VR chat, and a lot of them are all over the globe, and it's just crazy cool to me that you can just hop into this VR space and have a platform as an internet DJ to play all this without having to, have the prerequisite like X amount of listens or fans for like when you're stats that promoters
trying to win over a promoter or venue, or even just finding the money to get from point A to point B sometimes.
Yeah, the internet has enabled us to be able to hold our own events for very, very low cost, and it's really cool to see these pop-up raves on like VR chat where it just gives a platform to small indie musicians and DJs. Like, that's really cool to me.
Yeah, 100%. It's one of those, I've never used VR chat. I don't really have a computer that could handle it anyway, but I've always wondered how easy it would be to put together for a band. I think it'd be really fascinating to get like, my background, I come from like hard rock and metal and that sort of style. So I got, when we're performing, there's multiple people on the stage. There's multiple people. You got to kind of rein in. I imagine you'd have to at least have them in the same room just to avoid the inconsistency in networks or whatever. But it's fascinating to me just what you can do with technology these days. And print on demand vinyl, I couldn't have even seen that 5 years ago. That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, I've been in music for as long as like since 2008, so I've watched how much the internet has impacted music, and not only the creation of music, but also how we distribute and consume music, and watching like streaming rise up and all this crazy stuff. It's just pretty wild to see. But yeah, the internet is also just the way it's influenced music has been crazy, especially over the explosion of like the pandemic and quarantine.
Yeah. It's funny too, is I remember, I want to say back in like 2014, 2015, kind of around the rise of the early streaming services and stuff. I'm trying to even remember what the like early sites were called or whatever, but I feel like I remember some artists were trying to get these sort of virtual concerts going, and they weren't kind of picking up quite yet. But I feel like the pandemic has really changed it. I feel like that has there's now kind of a standard for that and for streaming and for VR, that kind of thing. I feel like we definitely live in a different time. And yeah, I mean, you're mentioning what you said, 2008. It's about more or less about the time I started working in music. I was doing like live sound and learning instruments and playing them terribly at the time. But I mean, I remember the only decent free DAW was Audacity. And I mean, that's not really much of a DAW. And there wasn't much in the way of like synthesizers or virtual instruments as much. I mean, it had what? Was Silent around back then? I feel like it must have been. Yeah.
It was like Nexus 2 and well, I don't even think Nexus 2. It was like Nexus, Silent, Zeta Plus is another one that I like to use. It's super old.
Yeah.
And a Massive, of course, was huge around that time.
Naturally. Yeah, it's fun. Earlier today, I was doing for my personal channel, I was doing a video on like soft synth, a tier list for soft synths, and so it had me looking at some of the old stuff I messed around with. Massive is kind of what got me started. Serum is the one that made it click, but I got started on Massive, and yeah, I remember the day when that was the new thing and defining the whole sound of music for a while.
Yeah, I was crazy obsessed with it when it came out. And I mean, to this day, I still use Massive. Because it's still pretty solid for basses, but I use it primarily for leads and basses. But I remember, of course, like, back in the day when dubstep was starting to emerge, like it was like Massive and FM8 were like the two to go to.
Native Instruments pretty much had a monopoly on the whole synth world for a while.
Oh yeah, they were like, I mean, they're still an industry giant, but they were definitely huge.
Yeah,
around that time for sure.
100%.
Because like music technology around that time exploded like exponentially, so it's just crazy to see how much.
Well, it's like, I think 2008 is kind of the first year people think of like the bedroom producer in some ways. Like you had the dubstep explosion, you had that explosion of the like EDM producers who were doing it on a laptop and stuff. I feel like that's when you also started hearing some of the old like gatekeepers complaining about laptop music. But like even in rock and metal, like I think that was the year that, you really started getting the Joey Sturgis and stuff like that, the kind of Warped Tour, like recording off the Pod Farm kind of bands and stuff like that as well. I think 2008 would really be about the time that like tech revolution started happening, and when the tools of the trade really became available to pretty much anyone. Yeah. So where did you start? Did you start like live sound, DJing, producing? What was kind of your gateway into the music?
I think just like my gateway was like my dad was into live sound, and I kind of grew up around just observing what he did and just being in that kind of environment. And he one day downloaded a demo of FL Studio version 8. And
oh man.
No, it's like old. that was the version I started off on.
But did he pirate it? Because it's not FL if you don't start by pirating, right?
Well, I can't say, but no, it was actually the demo version. But it was the version actually where you cannot save your projects. Like you can export the MP3s, but you cannot save things.
But you had to commit. You had to really commit to what you were doing before you let it.
Yeah. And yeah, he kind of gave up on using it, so he just gave it to me. He's like, here, you can like work on this, and like I just became obsessed with it. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, the stuff I was making at the time was awful. It was just really funny, like sounding stuff. But what really got me interested in wanting to create music was the music of a lot of the video game soundtracks I was playing at the time. And the Sonic the Hedgehog series was definitely a huge factor. I think it was probably the factor that got me into really wanting to compose, because it was like was a mix of genres, like so many different genres into like a blend for each level, and I just remember listening to these.
Would you say that that's why you're such a what am I thinking? Such a like a genre bending artist these days? Or just
Oh
always been
yeah,
like that? Just do whatever
yeah,
sounds cool?
yeah. I'm music is kind of a big obsession of mine, so I really love to explore different timbres and textures and sounds of different things, and the Sonic the Hedgehog soundtrack definitely drove that interest for me because of just the blend of different styles and what have you. So like, around the time I was learning electronic music, I was trying to remix or sample Sonic the Hedgehog, and like to this day I still sample Sonic the Hedgehog. Like
There you go. I know I've picked up
yeah.
on some of those. Like I'm not enough of a gamer to have played it much, but I can definitely. I mean, it's such an iconic sound. I mean, the music and the all of the like effects and stuff. Like I've definitely picked up on a number of those throughout the discographies. I've gone back and listened through older stuff and the newer stuff as well. I mean, you've got a very multifaceted sound. So yours is very much a discography. You're kind of in that same boat that I would put someone like Devin Townsend in, where you can't just listen to one record and you have an idea of what you're getting into. You really gotta sit in and go for the ride.
Yeah, and music grows with you as both an artist and also as like a listener. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my taste has changed over time, but it's funny because around the time I was getting into electronic music in 2008, progressive house was huge around the time, and this was like right before the explosion of like big festival, like EDM festivals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like Ultra was like the biggest one at the time, but what I liked about progressive house was it was a blend of older trance music style, which is stuff that I grew up listening to because my parents used to listen to that.
That's
and
cool.
and
That's
it
really
was cool. It's like it blended that old school trance sound with like a more pop EDM sound, and it was just very euphoric and very dreamy and pretty, and I was like really into that sound around the time of learning music. So, and it's funny because I'm re-exploring that sound now. Like I'm going back to my like kind of like nostalgic root.
Yeah. I feel like I can pick up on that in Currents and Desire. You've got that kind of more that laid back feel for sure. I'd like that the remix of Desire that you put out. I want to say like a month after the EP as well. It has that kind of just there's a great calm to it for sure.
Yeah. I feel like with the state of everything right now, it's just things are kind of crazy and hectic. So it's just like naturally I'm just going back to like nostalgic feelings, and but it's cool because I'm exploring. I'll always have like that more ravey, higher BPM background, so it's like that kind of dreamy house, but a little bit faster.
Yeah, I assume that exploring it now, you have that kind of hindsight and growth as an artist, so you have kind of a different perspective on it and new ideas you wouldn't have thought of before had you been doing it in like 2014, for example.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Doing it for so long, you kind of develop your own sound because instinctively, as you're creating, you'll just kind of know what to do in terms of a direction or vibe of the track that you're making. So instinctively, I know how to structure something, and I'll also, depending on the music I'm listening to at the time, I'll like to borrow elements or patterns or rhythms from music that I'm into at the time, because it just, I don't know, I'm like really obsessed with listening to music, so I like to apply a lot of stuff that I hear.
I absolutely understand that. I think you and I very much have a similar mindset in that way. I'm definitely one of those people who will listen to anything, and when I say that, I actually mean that I will listen to whatever, It's like, if I don't like a song, it's going to be very much more on a song by song basis and not a genre or style or scene kind of basis.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm the same way. I have pretty much an open mind when it comes to music and styles and sounds. So yeah, it's crazy. I'm just listening to music constantly.
Yeah. What would you say are kind of some of your current like favorite artists, favorite albums?
Right now I'm definitely listening to a lot of UKG artists, and a few that come to my head immediately are artists called like Salute
Hmm.
and Jemmy. They their approach to music is it's like that dreamy euphoric house, but it's more up tempo and like very shuffly and ethereal. And I've
Does it
just
get a
been
little bit more of that like kind of percussive garage sound underneath, or is it kind of
yeah,
more?
yeah.
Very
It's
cool.
yeah, all the shuffly garage percussion and what have you, and it's just it's so much fun to DJ as well. And I think that's what got me into producing more of the sound was I went on my first tour last year in 2022,
Yeah.
and yeah, like a lot of the music I was DJing at the time was like this UKG like up tempo garage and house, and I just got obsessed with spinning at that tempo. So
Mm.
after the tour, when I actually had studio time, um, I started applying that to my production, and it's been a lot of fun. So that's why I've been exploring that area for quite a bit of time now.
Sorry, how much do you find that doing the live shows and stuff kind of informs your style? Do you feel like you read a crowd and see what people are getting into and kind of feed off that and work more into that? Or do you just get into what you're getting into and kind of go in that direction, whatever's just kind of hitting you at the moment?
I feel it's a blend of both. I definitely love the feeling of feeding into the energy of the crowd. But I will also like to showcase a lot of the music that I've been really interested in listening to lately, and a lot of times I get really cool reactions from it. So
Yeah.
it's a really cool experience. Like, yes, playing virtually and also on live streams is really cool, but there's nothing like the feeling and sound of like being live in a venue and having that
Yeah.
energy.
It's a different energy for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love it.
Because you also do the con scene on occasion.
Yes.
You got any fun shows coming up?
I put in my auditions for FWA and Texas Furry Fiesta, so
Very
fingers
cool.
crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed to get placed. I'll be excited. I played at TFF last year, and the crowd and the energy was just it was really fun. It was probably one of my favorite sets.
Nice. Do you do any do you like to do much collaboration? I know you've done some. I've seen some of your actual like I've seen some of your collaborations on YouTube and stuff. Is it something that you try or like to do more, or is it something where you kind of wait for the right artist or the right opportunity?
I kind of wait until yeah, I kind of
Feel it
the
out.
artist yeah, I kind of feel it out, and if I have an artist that comes to mind that I think could take it in an interesting direction, I'll approach them with it. Um, there are a few artists this year that I definitely have been in talks with collaboration, and I'm very excited because a few of them are actually artists that I've DJ'd.
Oh,
Um,
very cool. That's awesome.
yeah, so I really want to do more collaborations. I'm more of an in person collaborator, so if I can get them like physically like in the studio as
Yeah,
we're working together, it just it makes the process like so much quicker for me.
I can see that for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I definitely love days like that, and I'm gonna definitely try to get more collaborations in.
That should be pretty cool. You think that's going to be something that'll be easier or harder after the move?
Um, I mean, since it'll all be done over the internet, it probably won't really be much of a change.
Yeah. I know I've seen you talking to Steve in one of the chats we're in. It's for the listeners, Steve is what are the project? He's got Blades of Fane. I want to say As He's Exhale was the like kind of ambient one he's got.
Yes.
as well. So he's local to you, isn't he? Or
Yeah,
local enough?
he definitely is.
I'd definitely be interested to hear what the two of you come up with. Just plug into the massive pedal board he's been building. I need to get him on the show at some point too.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. We actually have a project we've been working on for about 5 years, I think. And
Ooh.
yeah, we have a lot of material. Some of it was recorded with gear that I no longer own, that I've had to sell for rent. And
I've been there.
Yeah, so it's a really cool project. We have a few more tracks we need to finish up, and we'll get it out. But it's been in the works for quite a while. But yes, Steve
Awesome.
is a really cool. He's a really cool dude. I'm really happy with the work we've done together.
Yeah. Also a very talented musician. He's very much like you. He's very multifaceted. I mean, again, just As Seas Exhale and Blades of Fane are two wildly different sounds.
Yeah.
On the note of songs taking time and everything, I noticed that on, I want to say it was your, the Be Whiskered, I want to say maybe that one. You'd uploaded a set from that, and I heard, what I'm pretty sure I heard was a couple of the tracks from Currents, from the most recent record, but I believe that was before Desire had even come out. Do you find yourself sitting and working on tracks for a while? Do you have a point where you reach, where you say, I have enough for the EP or whatever, but I also have these that I want to do something else with? Or do they kind of just come out more quickly, more often?
It definitely varies. It depends on how productive I am on certain months, but I definitely love, as I'm creating a track and it's not finished yet, I love playing it for crowds to see their reaction and how they, like, what they think about it, and I like being able to tease it a bit with like different sets, because it gets people really excited about it being released, and it builds hype. And
filling out the crowd then.
Yeah, it's really cool to do, because I've definitely noticed after MFF, which was like one of the largest crowds I've ever played to. I think playing a few tracks from Currents definitely helped get it in more ears of newer listeners, and it's really cool to see. So.
Yeah, maybe even play a little bit of the kind of familiarity game. Do you ever find that if you're playing a crowd, do you ever find that you've had a track where you're kind of feeling it out with the crowd, and you got an idea of something, like feedback from the crowd kind of changed the way you were approaching a part, or you changed a part, or got an idea of how to finish a part maybe that you had been stuck on or weren't sure about in the past?
I mean, it's been pretty smooth. Nice. I think I've noticed. I think I've noticed. The more I overthink things in the process, the more in
your head you get about it.
Yeah, I've learned that the less I think about it, the smoother things tend to go. I used to be very neurotic about making mistakes and everything, but then like I've just learned like to have fun with it and just vibe, and it's always like really fun. It's like sometimes, like, I mean, 10 times out of 10, the audience isn't going to notice the mistakes you make. Only you will.
Yeah. No, I think it's good to have kind of a little bit more laid back mindset, not to, again, get in your own head too much about it. That's, I definitely feel like that. I feel like that as a producer too. Sometimes you got to worry about the broad strokes more than the fine details. You can easily just get lost being too much of a perfectionist.
Yes,
have you always self-produced?
Definitely. Yeah, for about as long as I remember, yes, I've always like self-produced pretty much everything I've done.
Because I notice you offer mixing and mastering.
Yes.
Have you ever worked with a producer or thought about working with another producer just to get a feel for the workflow? Or are you one of the people who just feels way more comfortable working on your own stuff than letting anyone else touch it?
I'm kind of impatient with my own process, where I feel I like learning different techniques or different approaches to stuff. So that way so that way I can get what I have in my vision out much more like quickly.
Yeah.
I love to. I find myself constantly exploring, and I guess I have like specific preferences for sound and texture I like in my music
Mm-hmm.
that I like to have approaches to. So, but yeah, I'm mostly I like to have everything together and know what is what.
Yeah. I find the answer to that can be really different depending on who you're working with. I know some people just they hate the process of being the mixing engineer or the producer or whatever. They just want to like play and let someone else make it sound good. But I know other people who are just like their workflow is their workflow or their sound is their sound, and they just don't feel comfortable letting anyone else touch it or mess with it. So I'm always curious where people fall on that sort of spectrum, because it's not one of those things where there is a right answer beyond just what is the right answer for you. But I'm always fascinated by people's kind of input on that, because it is such a different answer for everybody.
Yeah, and plus I enjoy the process of mixing and
Mm-hmm.
mastering as well. I find it very rewarding when I can get my mix the way I want it to be, and sounding very like nice and clean and stuff, and
Yeah.
it's been a fun process because back in 2020 when the pandemic started and I had nothing but time on my hands, I really tried to take mixing and mastering seriously,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really happy with how far I've come with it. So
Nice.
yeah,
Are you
I
self-taught?
figured. Yeah, I'm self taught. I mean, I've watched a few tutorials like here and there,
Mm-hmm.
but I've also just with practice and like figuring out what does what and developing like a taste and like an ear for things. It's
Yeah.
definitely helped. It's helped me tremendously.
Yeah, I can imagine. I have a bit of a mix of both on my end, but I always find just kind of getting down a rabbit hole or experimenting. I mean, you were talking earlier, the idea of just kind of playing with new techniques or ideas and stuff. Do you ever find yourself just sitting down with a synthesizer and making noise for no reason other than to do it? Because I know I do.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the process, and I think a very important part of that process, which I mean, I need to learn to take my own advice, is to record everything because you
Yeah,
can make
I'm so
you can
bad at
make a
that.
happy. Yeah, I mean, I always forget, but if you record happy little accidents, you can get some really cool results that you can recycle and reuse. But
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of recycling, I do that a lot too. Like I'll have days where even if I'm not really feeling too productive, I'll still sit at my desk and do what I like to call like sketching and doodling, where I'll develop a melody or a
Hmm.
chord progression. If I get stuck on it or find I can't get something out of it, I will save the notes, like that progression, into a folder so that way I can just recycle it for
You just
when
save it
it.
like as a MIDI.
Yeah. So I have basically a folder full of MIDI tracks of like melodies and stuff where
Very cool.
if if the idea didn't work before, it can definitely work in a different context.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it's funny because that's another one of those things I find is very different from person to person. I've heard similarly, there's people who hold on to every idea, every little bit and every little piece. I think like Andrew Huang is somebody who holds on to like projects from 15 years ago and stuff. But I've heard similarly like songwriters or guitarists or whatever will say like, if the riff doesn't vibe with me, I delete it and I never go back to it. I'll never touch it. If it didn't work, it's never going to, or something. So it's again one that's fascinating to hear different people's perspective on, because I find you get very different results from the people who, if they're not feeling it, they never do and they get rid of it, and the people who hold on to an idea and go, well, this was 9 years ago, but I think I know what this is doing now.
Yeah, and what's cool about that, and I can relate to that, is in a way is that on my album, or should I say EP Desire, the track Promise was actually a track I started back when I was like 16,
Oh man.
and yeah, and I've had this project file for quite a long time. And like, I mean, I'm 26 now, so like quite a bit of time has passed.
Yeah.
And so I was able to open up the project file, and yes, some sounds were missing, but the main presets, because I was using Massive at the time, I was able to open it up and it was just fine. The bare skeleton of the project file was still there. So I basically, using the knowledge that I have now and the production technique that I know, I was able to add in new samples and clean things up and build.
Get the general vibe, but adapt it to your current sound and knowledge.
Yeah, and it was a really cool and rewarding experience, and seeing that this track had been in the works for quite a long time is really cool to me, because I'm constantly exploring and seeing what works and what doesn't work, but to be able to approach it with an open mind and being like, okay, this might not work in this context or this setting, but it could work in this one. Yeah, and it's been a really fruitful process, because whenever I get into ruts of writer's block, I have basically a sample pack I created for myself to use, and it's been so helpful.
That's awesome. How often do you find yourself making samples?
Oh, a lot. I find myself making more midis than samples, although I feel like if I were to put out a sample pack, which has been an idea I've had for a long time, I could probably drop in a few samples that I've used in project files, like some sounds that I've manipulated and like pitched and stuff like that, because I have those too, and they're saved like on like a data file somewhere, and it's like hundreds upon hundreds of sounds. Just raw material. Yeah,
sometimes it's fun to just sort of have that stuff around. I've been wanting to get a field recorder so I can just capture sounds. I have to do it on my phone these days, but every now and again I'll just hear something weird and cool and just say, like, I'm out hiking in the Uintas or something, and we got all this like dry deadfall, these trees that have been like basically cracked up and everything for years, and one of them will just start groaning and creaking in the wind. I got to take a minute and just kind of hold the phone up and try to get some of that for whatever, it could be a really cool texture for something one of these days.
Yeah, and that's something I need to do more often. I mean, like, I'm recording my voice right now on like a Tascam DR5, and like, I've had it for quite a while. I should really try to reuse it sometime, because it's very handy to be able to have it on you, so when you just hear something, you can just capture it.
Yeah. I had a question in my mind and it disappeared. Oh, man.
It's all good.
You gotta love that when that happens.
Happens to me all the time.
So what's your current favorite, like, synthesizer or tools?
Oh my god. I mean, I'll start digital-wise. I'm going to start with... Serum is definitely my go-to for my primary synth.
I think that's the industry standard at this point.
It definitely is. That's my go-to. Silent is also my other go-to. I've been using it for quite a long time, and it's pretty much a very solid synth for how old it is.
Does Silent still work on a lot of machines, or do you have to kind of keep a legacy, like operating system or anything for it?
Oh, I mean, they're still updating it to this day. I ended up buying... I bought my copy of Silent, so I have a copy that can be updated, but they're still developing it, which is cool.
Nice. I feel like I'd heard a lot of people saying that they've been having issues with the... I think a lot of people said that it had not broken out of 32-bit, and so I feel like there were a lot of people who were losing it based on it basically being built for an older standard. I wasn't sure if it was something that was still being developed. I actually have not used it personally, but I was curious if that's something that is usable or is maybe usable depending, since it sounds like you actually have it.
Oh, it's very usable. I mean, like, you can... The latest version came out like several months ago, so it's like...
Okay.
They're always updating it. I think cool. I think with the previous versions breaking, that was like on the older version of Silent, which it was a problem I was running into. So I just decided to buy the license to like the new one, and it's just been, it's been very, very handy to have. It's the same with Serum. I ended up buying my copy of Serum too.
I did the rent to own through Splice.
Yeah,
great deal.
Yeah, that's what I did to own Serum, and Silent also does a rent to own thing, which is how I was able to afford it.
Oh, very cool. I love that model. If you can do the rent to own, that's really helpful. I think it's good to be able to have something that's more affordable when you're too broke to just drop $150, $200 on something all at once. But not something you have to like pull out a loan or get a credit score for as well,
Yeah, no, it's been great. Just that kind of approach has helped me afford gear. So, I mean, like, in terms of hardware that I own also like a Korg Minilog XD, which has been
nice.
It's been used in it's been used in a few tracks. It's a very, very good sounding synthesizer.
You feel like if you had the money, you'd buy a bunch of that like outboard and analog synths, or would you just get a couple and stick in the box?
Yeah, like I would really love to own like a Korg M1 and a Juno, because I love how warm the Juno sounds. In my track Desire, it uses a synth that basically emulates the Juno for like those plucks, so it sounds very vintage and shimmery. And
is it like one of the V Collection ones, or is it something that just kind of takes inspiration?
Oh, it was called the Tau Uno.
Oh, I know that one. I don't have it currently, but I downloaded it at some point ages ago. I have like the Tau ones, and then I think Full Bucket Music also does a lot of like free analog style.
Yeah, like the Tau is fantastic. It's if you want that that vintage like soft synth sound, it's very good for that kind of stuff. Like it has really cool filters, and you can even use like noise oscillators and
nice.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, I feel like my sound nowadays is more soft and ethereal, so it's like Tau is perfect for that kind of stuff.
You feel like you like the kind of the saturation of the analog gear then?
Yeah, I like when analog has like that slight detune. I mean, like what's cool about the Minilog is you still have to, when you start it up, it has to tune its oscillators, which is cool.
Yeah. You feel like your workflow is kind of leaning more analog in general, or just going to kind of...
I wish I had the budget for that.
Yeah. I mean, like even digitally, like do you find yourself going for the synths that have more of the analog feel and workflow, or do you just kind of grab whatever?
It's a mix of both, yeah. But I have the waveform shapes that I've been using when I shape my sounds have definitely been more sines and
like basic shapes.
Yeah, very, very, very basic shapes. I mean, my leads nowadays are just a simple sawtooth with like a low pass filter.
Yeah.
Or my basses are just a simple sine.
Sometimes you don't need to go crazy. Less is more.
Yeah, that's also been a technique I've been using to approach my music, is very much focused. Less is more production. I like having something the listener can latch onto and kind of follow along without being too lost in the soundscape.
Yeah, I can see that. So you're probably not going to be getting into anything too proggy at the moment then.
Depends on what mood I'm in.
Of course.
To be honest.
Naturally, yeah. I mean, you might be doing like prog metal in another 5 years or something.
Yeah, who knows?
Get back in touch, you'll learn how to play guitar and scream or something.
I mean, I feel bad. I've kind of fallen out of... I've been playing guitar for 15 years, but I've fallen out of playing for almost a year now. I need to pick it back up.
Well, you've played more recently than I have, that's for sure.
I've been way too busy with this project, and which is, I mean, it's been fun. It's a
good thing to be busy with, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's something I can get lost in, and I mean nowadays I find myself constantly creating, which is really good.
Yeah.
So
That's definitely a good way to be. You find that creating kind of relaxes you.
yeah, you just kind of get into this process where you're just doing tasks almost.
Yeah. Kind of turn off your brain and just go.
Yeah.
I've always struggled doing that with music, which I think is one of the reasons I'm a terrible songwriter. But I feel like the people who tend to have the best experience with music are the people who can just lock into that flow state, and it becomes that, just that honest kind of relaxation, that meditation. As I got that with art when I used to do visual art. Speaking of things I haven't done in ages, like I just sit there with a sketch pad and put on music or whatever and just get lost and realize it was 4 hours later suddenly. But I feel like I've never been able to lock into that state in music personally.
I feel what's easy for that kind of state is to not overthink the process and to not criticize a lot of your own action with how
Yeah.
you approach something. I've learned if I overthink the process, it leads to a halt in creativity.
Mm.
But I mean, it's easier said than done. It takes a
Yeah.
long
Yeah, for sure.
it takes a long time to get into that mental state of like not being too judgy of the kind of sound or approach to something and just focusing on loosely drafting like the basic structure of it. Because if you have the basic structure down, then you can go back and focus on the more fine detail.
Is there anything in music that you would like to do? Is there something you think would be really cool to try out that you've not had the chance to do before?
I mean, in the past, I used to make music for short films, but I've always wanted to make music for like animated films. I think
Mm-hmm.
the
Like feature
approach to
length?
feature
Mm.
length animated film. I would love to work with different palettes of sound and color and how that can pertain to the kind of emotions that are being portrayed. Um,
Yeah.
but I saw Pixar's Soul for the first time a few months ago,
Oh,
and
nice. That's a good movie.
it's really good. And I really love the music behind it because the music was also done by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who
Mm-hmm.
are associated with Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
So
I think at this point they've kind of set enough of a name for themselves that a lot of people think of them outside of that too, which is crazy. As
yeah,
Nine Inch Nails was huge, so to be able to have
yeah,
a legacy outside of that is kind of nuts. I feel like they're our generation's Danny Elfman. You know?
yes, yes. I love they're very influential to my approach to voicings and chords and stuff. I love Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's approach to setting a tone and an atmosphere in their scores and their use of detuning or stereo shaping to create a setting with audio. It's just really cool.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's also really cool seeing all of the kind of the former musician. Well, I mean, they're still musicians. Seeing the like former rock stars or former pop stars who get into that kind of field in general. I think there's an increasingly wider pipeline of the guy from a band who gets into that kind of production and composition. Wow, I can't believe that word was escaping me. Because I think, like you said, like Atticus Ross. I think of Danny Elfman. Think of Serge Tankian from System of a Down. One of the
Yeah.
people I hope to get on here later, Jesse Zaretti from Binary Code, does a lot of like soundtrack work and stuff now as well.
Oh, nice.
I think it's really cool seeing. I don't know if it's a thing with the mod. As I mean, some of these guys were before that period, but I feel like that's something with the modern age where that is more accessible to people. And I think that might be another example of just something where technology has changed the direction of the industry, maybe. I could be wrong on that, but I mean, I'm not a composer. I know a few, but I'm not one.
Oh, I mean, it definitely has. It's changed the approach, and sounds and stuff. I mean, it's really cool how we have enough sample libraries that you can create a professional sounding.
That's mental. I mean, even the free ones.
Yeah. Yeah,
like the number of free tools
good.
that sound better than most of the stuff 10, 15 years ago, you know?
Yes.
If you gave Vital to someone in 2008, blow their mind.
Yeah. It's been crazy.
You got any advice for anyone trying to get into this?
Oh, that's a tough one. I want to say, be patient with the process and don't overthink it. Never overthink any idea, because I think all ideas are good ideas as a creator.
Yeah. Which is evidence, I suppose, by the fact that you hold on to all your ideas, even if you're not seeing the vision quite yet.
Yeah, because who knows? Who knows what it could be shaped into in a different context. But yeah, be patient with the process and don't overthink it.
I think move on to Currents on the actual production side of that. So you mentioned, of course, that you've been kind of playing around with some of these tracks last year at some of your live sets and your VR DJ sets and everything. Has this been one that's been more in the works for a while, or is this one that did come more recently? Did it kind of come hand in hand with Desire, or was it something where you kind of had worked on Desire, finished it up, and then started finalizing Currents in a sort of different period? Because it did come out pretty quickly after each other. I mean, Desire itself was what, 4 months ago? 5 months ago?
Yeah, Desire came out in August.
Man.
Yeah. So I started writing Currents back in the summer of 2022, last year when I was touring.
Mm-hmm.
And the one track that was pretty much complete was Event Horizon. So I would close a lot of the shows in my tour with Event Horizon, and it's always crazy to feel the energy of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the tour, how did that come about? Was that something where you would try to get on it, or did you know somebody who was looking to try to bring someone else on it?
I mean, the tour was crazy because my friend Donnie, who runs a production company, was able to collaborate with another company and get this tour going. But it was basically a tour of Ghost Data was the artist that I was on tour with and supporting, and he approached me and he's just like, do you want to tour with Ghost Data? I'm like, oh, I've never been on tour before. That's really cool. And he's just like, we're going to be hitting a few cities in Florida and then one in Texas, because that's where he's based from.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we did it.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say we did it and it was a lot of fun. It was definitely a very unique experience.
Did you just kind of drive from point A to point B? Did you guys have a little van or something, or?
Yeah, we all hopped in this little minivan that my friend rented, and we went up and down Florida, and then he helped me get a flight out to Texas. And
awesome.
Did the last show of the tour out there. It was a lot of fun.
I assume that for you, your experience with tours and the cons is probably very different.
Yes, because with cons, it's a lot of them are fans and previous listeners of my music, and on tour, you're playing your material for a lot of new ears, people that haven't even heard who you are.
Yeah.
So to be able to play that in a space and to see how they're liking it and receiving it, on new ears and stuff, it was really cool to see. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, I can imagine. You think that there's a different enough energy between the tour crowds and the con crowds? And if so, which one's better?
I feel the energy is almost the same, but it hasn't always been like this, because pre-pandemic, in the States, like in America, a lot of the crowds weren't very receptive to higher tempoed music. And I feel like during
Just in general,
quarantine,
for the cons,
just in general, both cons and
the live shows,
non-convention, yeah,
you need to start playing for more metal fans. They love the up tempo stuff.
yeah, no,
Get a
that'd
mosh
be
pit
really
going.
fun. Yeah, I think during quarantine, more people were learning about rave music, and also it was a genre that was being played a lot on
Yeah,
all of these virtual events. So after the pandemic, the crowd in both convention atmospheres and the non-convention atmospheres have been very similar. Like people love that stuff now, and it's really crazy good to see.
that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
for context, I'd not mentioned earlier, you are with, like, you and I are both in the furry fandom for the non-furry listeners. And so the cons we're referring to usually are going to be like the fur cons and stuff, which I've actually not gone to as I can never afford cons. But I've heard a lot of discourse over faster music at the cons, and I always wondered, like, I feel like I'd heard people say that, like with the fursuits, because that's that's very much relevant to the context of the conversation. That's you're wearing a lot of extra gear when you're in suit, so the higher tempo stuff, I feel like I'd heard a lot of people saying was not conducive to the suits, but I've always wondered what the discourse was like, and especially from someone who's actually like been to and played the con scene.
I tend not to wrap up in furry discourse. It's very draining on my mental reserves on social media. I do know about it. I think it's just
Yeah,
it's a little silly. That's all I will say. And I mean, I'll also say that I don't know. I like DJing conventions because I feel like it's my way of giving back to my community.
yeah,
Because through furry, I've been able to make a living doing what I feel I'm best at.
which is
So
awesome.
yeah, it's after 14 years of trying to make this work and finally being able to just get by doing this in
Yeah,
furry, it's been amazing to me. So I feel like with conventions and being able to showcase the music that um, not only I listen to but also influences the music I give back to the community. Um,
yeah, for sure.
yeah, playing those events is my way of saying thank you, and are basically kind of the main reasons why I love DJing conventions.
So I imagine the conventions are probably a little bit more personal experience for you than they like the live shows, the tours, and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. I feel kind of a deeper connection to the convention performances because it's like you're showcasing to that community that basically helped made you who you are.
Yeah,
So those that's and the energy there is also like really good too. But after the pandemic and seeing more of an acceptance of higher tempo music is it's really cool to see.
yeah. As somebody who is a fan of high tempo stuff, I'm also very happy to see that outside of, just a good metal show or something. People
Mm-hmm.
are they're starting to get it finally.
Yeah, it's fun. It's good energy. I love
Yeah,
being just in a room full of people, just like not a care in the world. And you're just there for the music and
just
the
vibing.
vibes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really good feeling.
Well, I mean, one thing I got to imagine is very different with the con scene versus just your standard live show is you got people traveling from all over the world to be in that space. You got a lot of people who know each other. You got a lot of people who've not seen each other in a year, or whatever. I have to imagine that the energy at a show where most of the room knows each other and there's still so many of them has got to be very interesting compared to, I mean, you go to like a big concert or whatever, you might run into one or two of your friends, maybe whoever you came out with, maybe somebody and like in town or work with or went to school with, but it's not the same thing. It's not a room of people who are there because they know each other, or at least because they have that like shared kind of common community thread beyond just liking the same artist vaguely.
Yeah, no, it's a great experience. It's a very close knit community, and it's full of amazing people. And the fact that we have these conventions to host these spaces and to be able to host a platform for furry musicians and DJs to showcase that, it's a really cool experience.
Yeah. It's also really cool for me is one of the projects I run, and I'm probably going to get my partner on this project on at some point as well, because they make some really cool music, is the Furry Music Anthology. That's kind of like a passion project. And at the time that we had started it, it felt like music in the fandom was kind of fragmented, and a lot of people weren't really giving it the attention it deserved. And so we wanted to start connecting musicians and producers and kind of create more of a community around it. So for me, seeing just how much attention and love there has been for it lately has been very rewarding and exciting.
Yeah, it's been great to be able to see the community of furry musicians flourish and to have this appreciation for it. It's really cool because like there are so many different creatives in furry in many different fields, even non-creative fields, and
yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. It's just a magical thing to be able to do this and to be involved in the community.
Absolutely. So if you had your choice, dream shows, who would you want to see live? If it could be anyone, living or dead, who would you want to actually perform with? Being anyone, living or dead. It's a fun question. I always like to see what people's thought process is.
I think right now, I've always wanted to see Salute live because his mixing and his music has been really like crazy good and influential to me. I would also like to play a show with him, like a B2B, like a back-to-back set.
That'd be cool.
It'd be really fun. Yeah.
Try to do the like seamless transition.
Yeah, like it's that kind of stuff is fun. You're basically exploring each other's DJ libraries and seeing what you're both into. And it's good energy. It's good fun. I like to do it with friends.
Yeah, I can imagine that's one of the things that's very different. I mean, there is one of the things that is really awesome about seeing like an EDM show. Like I went to No Mana last year with one of my buddies, and one of the transitions was so smooth he didn't even realize that there was a change on stage until he started hearing familiar melodies. Like, oh, wait a second, that's not the guy. That's not Eddie. That's not the guy who was on before. But you get the metal shows and you get like 45 minutes of standing around the venue waiting for the next band to get their drums on stage and get the cabs
the
all
turnover.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things I always like in the EDM scene is you can just smooth transitions, seamless transitions if you got the right guys.
Yeah, that's the he saw No Mana. He's a really cool artist.
Yeah, that was a great show. I realized I'm old now. I definitely do not have the energy I used to. I came away from that with, my neck and my back hurting and my joints all achy and stuff. But
I feel like I'm on my way there with how my back has been feeling. So
it hits you so fast. It's ridiculous. It's like life is over after 24.
My stamina these days is just much lower, and I'm just like I can't stay up as late as I used to.
Yeah. It always blows my mind when you see those producers or whatever up on stage in their 50s just jumping and bouncing around, just like,
hey, where's that
energy? Yeah.
It's that passion.
Yeah, it just got to feed off that, I guess, that energy from everybody around. Just draw from it. Get the crowd to keep you moving.
Absolutely.
You got a dream piece of gear?
I really want to say the Roland JP 8000. It's a really good one. It was like the pinnacle of classic trance synthesizers because it has a supersaw oscillator.
You gotta love that.
Yeah, it's got that really cool like sound to it. That's definitely the piece of gear that I really want.
Feel like you would have a big studio if you could.
Oh, absolutely. When I move up north, I'm hoping that I can, if I have the time, money, and resources, I want to actually build my own studio space.
That'd be cool. You got any
Yeah.
plans like in mind already that you want to try out? The thing you're excited to put into it?
I mean, if it was like a separate space outside of the house, it'd be cool to have like
Mm-hmm.
shock absorbers and like the floor, so that way it basically makes it super quiet inside and out.
Yeah. Do the room in the room.
That's really what I really want from my studio.
Yeah, I absolutely get that. I'm looking at moving out myself at some point within the year, and I keep thinking about like building a soundproof booth and stuff for the drums or like guitar cabinets or vocals or whatever. I'd love to get my hands, well, really just get my hands on space I could build that in more than anything.
Yeah, that's the thing is space. I mean, where I currently live, it's very small.
Are you in an apartment? Do you have issues with neighbors, or do you at least have enough
Oh
kind
no,
of...
it's fine. I mean, I live in a house with roommates, and it's pretty chill. I like
That's
it.
good.
It's a good living arrangement, but I would like to just be able to have a space separate from where I sleep that I can go. Yeah, I can allot time to go in,
Yeah.
work, and then when I leave that space, I have a separate space to relax to, because it's kind
Mhm.
of a bit difficult when I wake up in my workspace.
Yeah, I know that messes with people sometimes having that kind of lack of separation. It gets expensive. That's the thing that sucks. Just gets so expensive.
Yeah, but if I can make it work, I think it'd be rewarding.
Yeah. Would you even just put it in the living room if you had to?
Maybe, but it probably. I'll have to see. It may be a possibility if I plan it just right. Who knows?
Yeah. I guess you have to really get into the space and see it first.
Yeah.
What kinds of things outside of music influence your workflow?
Just living my life. Driving, going out and seeing friends. Like Florida's very spread out, so I do a lot of driving and traveling.
Hmm.
Stuff like that. Traveling up to see my partner up north.
Yeah.
Which it's very pretty up there, like up in New Hampshire and just that general area.
I
But
definitely know how that goes. I lived in Alaska for 10 years. I've got that mountain fever, you know?
I can't get enough of it. Every time I go up there, I'm just like I want this. I want to surround myself with it. So
My grandfather was a mountaineer. He always said that if he was anywhere too flat, he felt like he was just going to roll off the edge of the earth. I feel like I relate with that for sure.
yeah, no, I like hills and mountains and just those kind of atmospheres, because just being
Yeah.
able to get away from all that noise and all just the monotony of it, it just gives you
Yeah.
a new perspective and just a refreshing outlook on things.
Yeah.
And that's what inspired Currents, because after I went up north and did some hiking and camping with my partner, I
Mm.
went back into the studio and just felt rejuvenated and very inspired by those kind
Mhm.
of experiences.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, it expedited the process of the creation of the EP, and it was a very rewarding process. So
Yeah. Is that where the name comes from?
um I'm going to leave that up to the listener, because I want
Okay.
the EP definitely does have a personal meaning to it attached to it.
Right.
But what I love is leaving the interpretation up to whoever hears it, because
Yeah.
there's something special to me about the listener being able to relate something in their own life to an existing piece of media.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I want to leave all the titles and the feelings of the track open to interpretation.
I think that's a good approach with art. That's one of those, again, going back to the visual arts, that's something I used to do. My guest on the second episode, Adam, was a big inspiration for me as a songwriter. And I know that the thing that inspired me, the ways I related to his music were different from the experiences he had when he wrote it. But I would do artwork to his music, and he became a fan of my artwork. ironically enough. So I'm inspiring the guy who inspired me. But at the same time, again, it's like I know that the meaning of my artwork is different for me than it is for him. And I think kind of leaving that open end can really help to fuel the artistic experience, or to fuel the social experience of enjoying art together, when somebody can kind of take their own thing out of it, even if it isn't what you intended. You know, is it like, in some ways, as the creator, you're not entirely in control of how it affects the listener, the viewer, the person who's consuming the art. So I think it's
Yeah.
healthy to not try to force it on anyone, or just to kind of be mindful of that perspective. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to whoever's perceiving this work of media to be able to attach their own meaning to it. And yeah, that's what makes like art so special to me, both
Yeah.
visual and audio, is the experience of creating it, but also to be able to attach different meaning and perspective to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny, like going all the way back to the beginning, the visual art, the album cover, you'd said you just gave the artist kind of, here's the music, do art that you vibe with, just take that and, use that creatively however you wish, just put the character in. I feel like that was for me, again, going back to a previous guest, my dude Tony. I've done pretty much every album cover for him. I think we talked about that in our episode, but he's completely blind. So he just kind of gives me the music and the idea, and he'll give me kind of briefs, like things he imagines. But because he's not able to see it, he kind of just gives me a roadmap, and then just kind of lets me go free with it. And I always found that very rewarding, being able to just kind of build an interpretation of the vision, but more from my own experience with it.
Yeah, it becomes a really cool collaboration between artists of different mediums, but at the end of the day, it's both essentially kind of the same thing, because it's
Yeah.
an experience of human expression.
Getting the chance to inspire each other.
Yes. And that's what I love about jamming out with friends on the same DJ setup, because you're sharing each other's music libraries and listening to
Yeah.
music together, but you're in the end both collaborating on a singular piece, and it's really cool to me.
Yeah. Even just getting to see the way that people kind of interact with the same gear differently, I love when you can sit down with something and, here's the thing I use every day, and your buddy's sitting there just kind of doing something completely different with it. And like, oh, I never would have thought of that. Or, oh man, that's really cool. Hold on. That's giving me an idea,
Yeah.
We, very recently, I was hanging out with Vasily from Peak Divide. The followers of the channel know him from previous episode, and he and Clara helped me with the kegs, the samples we put out more recently. But he's got this Euro rack, like a really small one, in a briefcase, and
Nice.
He had that set up, and we had that hooked into the computer, and then I had VCV rack and stuff, and we were just kind of messing around with this modular jam thing. And it's one of those things where it's being able to feed off of his creative energy had me doing things I wouldn't have been kind of really doing on my own,
Yeah. That's the cool thing about collaboration, is both people are creating new avenues for new ideas in a very creative environment, and it's very easy to get lost in a flow state of creating like that.
Yeah.
Which is why I really want to try to get back into collaborating a bit more, because I want it to be able to cultivate that kind of environment, because a lot of really cool ideas come out of it. And it also it helps you stretch your muscles as an artist, because it's like you mentioned, you go through ideas you couldn't even think of in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, getting a chance to learn from other people, or even be challenged by other people. I think that's always really fun. I think that's one of the reasons that my current band works as well as it does versus other projects I had that didn't, is the ability of or the ability for us to just kind of riff off each other. You know, I feel like it's a little bit more kind of creatively free, and going back to what you were saying, like not getting too in your own head about it, not taking it too seriously. I mean, with a band name as Dumb as Bloody Pineapples, there's no requirement to be too cool or anything, you know? And I think that is very freeing that, you know, the album we're working on right now, I think I've been struggling with it. This is, you know, a good example of the challenge part. Toby had a song, which I think he wrote in like 2005. Like really old, that he has in this like Guitar Pro project, and he tasked me with writing some like synth parts and all that stuff for it. And I really struggled with what I had. I think I got a cool intro and some ideas for the bridge, but you know, it was one of those where I'm not a great songwriter, and there's so much that was kind of out in the open, and so much I had to kind of rethink and restructure that it kind of pushed me a bit beyond my comfort zone. But it's a good learning experience. It's a good chance to have something that kind of sharpens your tools as a creator too.
Yeah, I mean, it's important as an artist, because you always need to be able to have those experiences of exploring and always trying something new, because it helps freshen up the creative process, and it helps you come up with new ideas and things to keep things like fresh and creative and inspiring. Because I mean, as an artist, you've probably felt this before, is like falling into a creative monotony, and that eventually leads to writer's block,
burnout, and yeah. No, it's good to keep things fresh. You know, sometimes it can just kind of force you into a different path when you're just kind of sitting there stuck with what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's like I said earlier, if it's an idea that's not working, you can just save it and recycle it way later. What's handy about that too is you can even you can color code it or name what key it is. So it's like if you're working on a track in a specific key, when you go through your folder, you'll have these MIDI sequences sorted by key, which is very helpful.
Yeah, I've always struggled. I'm completely colorblind on my end, so I've always it's one of those dumb things that I know for average people who can see color, you see the way the DJs will set up like their wheel of fifths on, you know, a color scale or whatever. And for me, it just melts my brain. But I know for the average person, it's probably like the most, what am I thinking? The most, like workflow hack thing they can set up in a pinch.
Yeah.
No, I definitely think organizing is very important too when you're holding on to that many files. I can only imagine what a mess it is if you've just got like a sea of you know, melodies in space.
My life. I mean, like that's just my project files. I mean, I'm just now starting to actually go back and trying to finish things that I've started, because I mean, I'm sure no artist is no stranger to starting something and then moving on to a new idea. So you're sitting on a lot of ideas.
Oh, for sure.
So I'm actually trying to go back and sort things and finish ideas, and because a lot of times it's also really good practice to do.
You feel like you're already working on the next album then?
Yeah, I mean, I already have another release on the way.
Oh, you're already ahead of it then. Jeez. Well done.
Oh, thank you. It's like I said earlier, I'm just obsessed with music, and I'm just really into the process of exploring and translating what I experience and feel into audio.
That sort of need to create.
Yeah.
I think it's a good place to be. I think as long as you're in that flow state, that need to create can be it can kind of give you a lot of purpose for sure.
Yeah, it's a healthy outlet. It's definitely an outlet that's my favorite in ways of just relaxing and creating.
Have you ever done the thing where you try to look at an image or whatever and just try to translate it into music or something?
Yeah, I mean, my side project, Cobalt Rabbit, which it's been kind of on hiatus at the moment because I'm
Hmm.
more focused on GOJII as a project. But
Yeah.
with that project, I used to go on a lot of walks and take photos on my phone, and some of the things I would take would end up inspiring tracks and becoming like the album cover for a track. And
Nice.
yeah, it was a lot of like nature photography and stuff that I've found on like
Nice.
trails. So it's a fun process. I still need to I need to get back into doing it because I've kind of fallen out of practice. But it's a lot of there's a lot of good ways out there to cultivate inspiration, and photography
Yeah.
is definitely one.
I feel like the move will probably help with that too. You'll have a whole new environment to explore and more excuses to go out and find exciting new things.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, my music changes with time, and moves definitely inspire
Yeah.
change in my music as well because I'm in a new environment and there's new places and sensations and experiences and you
Yeah.
know
Well, I'm thinking
well
of. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm just always creating.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things talking about the way that environment can inspire you. I'm thinking of Angel Vivaldi talking on his latest album, or possibly the one before it. I think his latest one, where, I mean, it's an extreme example, but he painted his studio a different color for every track when he focused on the like recording process, because he found that the color of his studio changed his kind of mindset and his flow state, and he wanted to translate that emotionally through the music, so he would repaint the room when he went to track each of these different songs.
I'm I mean I'm no stranger to that. I have a LED. I have like an LED strip running on the back wall that my desk is located at.
That
So
sounds much more affordable and less time
yeah,
consuming for sure.
I mean it's even just certain days, certain colors will be different moods and vibes and stuff. So
Yeah.
I'll color coordinate the vibe of whatever I'm going to explore that day or finish. So I definitely love being able to do that, to set the tone of something by changing my environment around me.
Yeah. When Toby and I started True North Audio, one of our kind of inspirations was people like Sylvia Massey, who would go out and do these really crazy on-site recordings and kind of fun adventures in the studio and everything. Just very, very adventurous and very experimental. And that's kind of, the fundamental idea was, um, adventure audio. I mean, that's why we chose True North Audio as the name, and the idea of trying to get out and kind of record in places you can't normally do, stuff like that. A good kind of example of that would be Venus Theory and Ben Jordan recently, like spelunking, getting pretty deep into a cave and recording a bunch of reverb IRs and stuff. So I'm curious, for your part, have you ever thought about like really getting out there and getting yourself into a kind of weird or experimental or unfamiliar environment and kind of trying to vibe off an area that's not a studio?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, during my trips to see my partner up north, are there are always experiences and opportunities for me
Mm,
to create new material because it's very pretty up there. There are just an endless amount of forests and mountains and lakes, and
yeah,
the weather is nice. I mean, currently, as of recording this, it's just been snowing up there like crazy. And
same here. Yep.
yeah, I know. It's funny. I was born and raised in Florida, but I cannot stand the heat down here, and I love cold environments, especially environments with snow.
You're
So
definitely a rare case in that. I'm actually the same
yeah,
way. I like the cold and I like the snow, but I've had so many friends who are not not in that camp for sure. But it's one of especially that humidity. I was born in the South. I wasn't raised in the South. We're a military family, so we moved all over the place. But I mean, that just with the air feeling like breathing soup kind of feeling you get down there. Just I don't vibe with it. At least with the heat here in Utah, it's nice and dry, so it doesn't it doesn't feel like you're breathing soup. It's not as oppressive, and you can stand in the shade, and it's actually cooler. But I love a good winter storm. I mean, something you would probably understand then is the that calm when you're in a really good storm, really good snow,
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
really quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like that is an underappreciated experience, but I understand a lot of people just don't do the cold. No, it's nice being able to talk with somebody who has that same that same perspective in that way.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I can't stand the, like you said, it's like that wet, soupy heat that Florida carries.
Yeah, yeah, we had it in Georgia too. I mean, we were just above you anyway, but
Yeah.
have you seen Andrew Huang's video, the one where he goes out to like Banff and he records the vocal tracks out on Lake Louise and stuff in the winter?
Oh, I have not.
Oh, I'll send that to you after the podcast. It's a really good video. It's one of those, again, it's really sentimental, I guess is a way of putting it. It feels like you're getting to follow him on a journey where he's really in that inspired flow state, and you get to watch him creating in an environment that is outside of his studio and gets him thinking differently, but it's an environment that is deeply personal to him. And I mean, maybe it's just because I'm a sentimental old man. Another thing about when you get older, for anyone younger, you'll just start crying at everything. That just starts happening, and just your eyes start leaking or whatever. But no, that video and that song definitely got the tears going.
Yeah, I'll have to give it a watch. That sounds really really super inspiring.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's absolutely the sort of thing that I was going to say the sort of thing that inspired us, but I think it came out after we started the company. But it is very much that sort of thing. You see it, and you just kind of remember why you do this. You know,
Yeah.
it's very reinvigorating. I can imagine you out there in the woods probably having that same experience where you just can, at least for me, you breathe in that kind of fresh air and you just feel regrounded, and kind of
Yeah.
take some of that burden.
Yeah, it's you're able to shake up the snow globe, so to speak, with the monotony of your working life, and to just be able to be away from that for just a little bit is super refreshing. It's why I'm like really super excited about moving up north, is to be able to have better access to those kind of environments and to be in nature more. It's going to be very inspiring to me for sure.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I think that's going to be an awesome deal. I look forward to hearing what it does for your music too. I'm always very much listening intently. You think you're going to have the new record out before or after the move? You think it's going to have an influence, I guess, is the question.
We'll see. I mean, it'll definitely be before the move, that's for sure.
Yeah. Nice. Have you ever had a chance to get out into the Red Rock country, the desert in the Southwest?
I would love to. It's really pretty out there.
You'll have to come out and visit sometime, take you down to Canyonlands. You have not lived until you have seen the desert sky, perfectly clear, Milky Way shining bright as can imagine. It's an amazing experience.
Well, that's definitely been a bucket list goal of mine. I've wanted to go somewhere where there's zero light pollution.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's very rare that you can find some place that's just that clear. And then, I mean, the great thing on top of that is a little bit higher elevation, so you have less of the atmosphere between you and the stars. A few more of them are visible, and then because it's so dry, you have less of that kind of, I don't want to say I don't think it's particles, but there's a kind of effect with humidity that obscures starlight a bit more. And in the desert, you get that just crystal clear sky. It's amazing. You bring out binoculars or a telescope or something, and it makes you feel very small, but it is a wildly inspiring experience. Not to mention, there is no calm like the peaceful quiet of the desert.
Yeah, no, I bet that sounds really cool. Hope to experience that someday.
Yeah. Well, come out and visit if you can. I can get a few people together and we can organize a trip. I've been wanting to get down to the Red Rock, like the Canyon Country, and do some recordings. There's also the like really fun, wavy, narrow, like sandstone canyons and stuff, and you can get some really fascinating, like reverb and kind of the sound of the space is very clear in that way. I think it'd be really fun to record down there. Maybe I'll have to come down and join for one of those sessions or something.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Going back to the emotion and everything, do you feel when you're, what am I thinking? Like when you're down, do you like to write happy music or sad music? Do you find that your emotion sometimes is inverse to the way that you write, or do you feel like it's amplifies the way that you write?
It inspires what I write.
So you feel like you do, like if you're feeling down, you write music that has kind of more of a somber edge, or?
Yeah, definitely.
It's always one I'm curious about too, is for people like, I feel like some people, if they're feeling down, they find that they tend to feel better when they're writing something more intense or upbeat or energetic, and some people tend to like to try to capture the emotion and amplify it.
Yeah. No, it's a cool process of being able to do that, but what's also cool is if I write music while I'm down, I can help myself feel better if I write it in a major key.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because a lot of my music is major keyed.
Yeah. You got a favorite soundtrack or anything, right?
Definitely, it's still the soundtrack to that film, Elysium. It's a good one.
Yeah.
It's like the use of like pacing and the overall vibe of the soundtrack is really good.
Yeah. How wide would you say your musical influence is?
Pretty wide. I mean, I like to listen to a mix of everything. I mean, like non-electronic music, I like to listen to bands like Black Midi and Battles is another one, which is like experimental rock music. And definitely also film soundtracks, like the soundtrack to Elysium is really good. Another soundtrack I like to listen to is it's the one to Soul by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. It's a really, really good one.
I'm assuming Trent and Atticus are probably among your favorite composers in that case. They come up a lot, so I assume they're one of your favorite.
Because like I grew up listening to Nine Inch Nails a lot too, like throughout my teens as well. So
yeah, you ever find yourself in moods where you're listening to really wide extremes?
Oh yeah, definitely. I like to listen some days like Nine Inch Nails and artists like Sun is another one where it's like where it's like spelled like really interestingly.
Do you pronounce the O or whatever?
I used to until I realized you're not supposed to pronounce it.
Well, it's like the hearts in your name. It's the hearts are silent. It's GOJII with the silent hearts.
Yes.
That's one of those things. I always love when you see an artist name that has like characters and stuff in it, but there's also the point where you're trying to figure out like if it's something like Sun, you're like, this seems like it could be pronounceable, but is it supposed to be? And then you get ones like yours, like nobody. I can't imagine anybody's going to say. If you listen to Heart, GOJII Heart, or
you never know.
Yeah,
I mean,
you let me know if you meet the person.
I mean, there's also the instance of there's that one artist Fortet where he has a side project that's just indecipherable symbols. Like I cannot pronounce what it's called, and I cannot tell you the names of any of the tracks because they're all like crazy indecipherable like Unicode symbols.
Well, you get like oh man, you get that. There's Korn with the backwards R, which is just a logo thing, but it's such a thing that I ended up actually like finding I'm not sure what the character actually is in Cyrillic off the top of my head, but the Russian backwards R, I use that character to name Korn on my like in my iTunes and on my iPod and stuff. There's like Chino from Deftones. He has a band called Crosses, but part of the band's name is parentheses and 3 like cross emojis or cross. Well, like I said, it's probably like a Unicode thing, but like the 3 crosses is like part of the band's name. Although it's kind of a nightmare trying to get the names correct, because I'm the sort of person where I look at that and go, well, I got to make sure that that's how the name is spelled on my iPod.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, part of the reason I asked the wide variety questions, actually, when Desire dropped, I was getting a lot of listens from me, but I was happening to actually go through one of those like really weird, like wild swings of style, like all at once. So it was like, I think at the time that Desire dropped, I was listening to, it wouldn't have been Lorna Shore. Or maybe it was Lorna Shore. I don't think that album had dropped yet, though. I think that was later in the year. Was like I was listening to Desire and I was listening to Meth Witch, which is this super like tech core, deathcore kind of. It's really intense.
Oh, nice.
And then I was swinging wildly back the other direction to like the Bluey soundtrack, and then wildly again to. Again, I don't think it was Lorna Shore, but some other like hardcore band in that same kind of vein. And then, back. So it's, it's just all over the place. But I always wonder with people who do listen to that wide variety, is it like, does the mood shift slowly, or do you have days where you're listening to, a fucking Burn Victim by, Meth Witch, and then something off the Bluey soundtrack or whatever, like back to back.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like music, just what I listen to depends on my mood, and my mood can fluctuate throughout the day, or like a favorite song of mine could pop into my head, and I would want to listen to it. So it really just depends. I like being able to listen to just a different, like, wide variety of music.
Yeah. Yeah, I find some people definitely have the slower sweat. Like, they'll go through a period where they're listening to the softer stuff and then slowly get back in. But I always love when you can just switch,
Yeah.
Just so that my favorite thing has always been, it's a game with my friends, because it's crazy whiplash for the people who don't have the ability to back and forth, but just putting your music library on shuffle and just being like, listen, it might be VeggieTales. It might be some like weird German industrial something from the 90s. Like I can't tell you what's going to come up next, but it'll be something.
Nice. Yeah, no, I love that.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Thank you for joining me. Again, if anyone wants to listen to your music, that is GOJII with 2 I's and Silent Hearts. You don't pronounce those. New album Currents, very recent Desire. Got a few other like singles and stuff out, and sounds like another one is right around the corner. So no shortage of music. And like I said earlier, you gotta dig into the discography. It's you're not going to get the picture of the whole sound off one. I mean, again, Vasily, my guest, I want to say 2 episodes ago, he ended up just buying the whole discography. So do that, and do it on Bandcamp Friday.
Yes,
and get that vinyl if you can.
Yes.
But don't get it before I do. Well, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.